welcome to Eden Town Hall number 75. Today is Thursday, March 5th. I have the pleasure to be here with Tadas and Rosmari, joining us for the first time in quite a while. We have some exciting topics on the agenda today. We're just catching up as well. Tadas, Rosmari, if there's anything you want to share, then feel free. But otherwise, I suppose I'll just get ahead and jump into an introductory presentation to provide an overview of the topics. So we're here at Eden Town Hall, an Eden Fractal community event, and we will be having an extended space for discussion today about several topics that were proposed over the past, the last Synchronous Respect Trees game that we played. There were 10 topics proposed by Eden Fractal community members, so people can see the Eden creators tweet and find out all the details there about the topics. That links to the snapshot polls where people propose these topics. The topics that have the most votes are 2026 resolutions and break plans, exploring matrix.org, and improvements to SRT v1, as well as things about Eden Fractal Community Agreement, Eden Fractal Intents document. And for anybody who's not familiar, Eden Fractal is a community dedicated to optimizing collective decision making through collaborative research, development, education, gamification, community engagement. You can learn more at edenfractal.com, and Eden Fractal is a community forum in support of these goals, and the Eden Fractal community where we meet to discuss the future of collaborative decision making. More details at edentownhall.com. And want to let everybody know that the most recent videos from last week's events have been published on the Eden Creators YouTube channel. We officially approved the ORDAO configuration, some new updates, and we also discussed break plans, and then we played a respect game with some good friends in the Fractal ecosystem as well. So I encourage everybody to check out those videos and like and help spread the word about Eden Fractal and the Fractal ecosystem. And of course, you can find all these videos on those websites I mentioned before as well for more details. So, next week we'll be having a Respect Game event as well as an Eden Town Hall, but today it's just the Eden Town Hall that we'll be having, and we might do it for up to 2 hours, and this will be a great town hall. So, as I mentioned some of the topics. There's also Fractalgram, Eden Plus Fractal improvements, and recognizing prior contributions that were also proposed as well. And people can see the Eden Fractal Telegram group, t.me/Eden Fractal, to see all the topics, as well as the Eden Creators calendar to join the next events and make proposals for topics in the next events that are coming up. And you can see the amount of votes that each one of these topics received here. We did approve the ORDAO configuration, so I don't think we need to talk about that now. That was the top voted topic from last week. And then the top voted topics, there's 2026 resolutions and break plans, and then exploring matrix.org after that. And in both the Eden Fractal Telegram group and the snapshot polls, then you can find out more details about each of these proposals, and a lot of them have links where people can learn more. But yeah, I think that Tadas is familiar with that, and Rosmari as well. And I think we already thoroughly discussed the proposal of the ORDAO configuration, so if we want, we can jump right into 2026 resolution and spring break plans and daylight savings time. As a note here, I had also made a draft proposal. So we discussed this last week in quite a bit of detail, and then I made a draft proposal for taking a 4-week spring break, as goes with that follows up with that discussion that I had with Tadas at last week's town hall, and also our tradition of taking mid-season breaks. And then I shared this in the Eden Fractal Telegram chat later, and people can see the proposal on Notion here, and any feedback is welcome. But the idea was that this would provide time for rest, and there's more rationale here, as well as infrastructure development and focus work, and season alignment and calendar positioning, and more details of what can happen over the break, and some context about our previous breaks and how we could have flexibility and so forth. So we can discuss that, and also we can jump around with the other topics. These topics are just here to help guide our discussion. It's also the first time that Rosmari's been here for a while, and actually first time that Rosmari's been here since we got married back in December. So it's been just about 3 months now. So if we want to just have an open discussion about anything else, then we can as well, maybe catch up a little bit. But that's kind of like an overview of topics that we have on the agenda. And I see Rosmari's putting up the heart. Yes, lots of love. And Rosmari, Tadas, if there's anything that you want to share, any topics you want to discuss in particular, then feel free. I know you're both talking a little bit before. Tadas is putting up the confetti here. Tadas is in a party mood. I don't know if I've ever seen Tadas put up the confetti emoji before.
Put the ball all the time.
Do you do it all the time? You're always throwing up confetti. I miss it, I guess.
It's just in space. It does not
Yeah.
act.
it just floats around. All right, that's it. Okay, well, thanks for throwing out the confetti, and thanks for the partying, and yeah, what shall we discuss here at Eden Town Hall? Maybe Rosmari, I don't know if you want to say hello. It's the first time people have heard from you in a while. Also for context, I think it's been mentioned before, but Rosmari hasn't been joining for the past months because we've been working on some legal matters so that she can get work permits and so forth to work, because she moved and we're now living together, and once she gets her work permits, then I think she's planning to join again, but she figured she could join us and be with us at least for a little while for today's event. I don't know if she'll be here for the whole event or just for a little bit, but that's context on where Rosemary's been, and then, prior we were talking about how we're all happy to be here and see each other and stuff like that. It reminds me a little bit of this time about 3 years ago, a little longer than 3 years ago, we met. I'd met Rosmari, and we were in a breakout room with Tadas as well. So good times, and I see Saul is joining too. So welcome, Saul. So today's all, we're just having a silent day. We're not talking, so feel free to just relax. If you want to put on some meditation music, we're all in deep thought right now. We're enjoying your drive. But yeah, if we want to discuss anything else, like the break plans, curious. I saw you gave a thumbs up about the break plan, so we could jump into that. And think about if you have any feedback there. I'd be curious to hear about it. Or Rosmari or Zal. Of course, it's just kind of an open discussion here, open floor. So does anybody have any thoughts about the break plans or anything else on your mind?
Yeah, I haven't looked at. You shared a document on the break plans?
Yes, that is correct. If you go in the Eden Fractal Telegram chat, then you can see my message here, and there's a little button that says here that says draft proposal, and you can click that, and it's a Notion document that provides a bit of context for this 4-week break for events, how long it would be, some context on the past breaks and the precedent that we've had so far, and then some rationale about why I think that this is probably a good idea. And I kind of gave a little overview of that. I did some research over the past week to think about how the full season or so it's full years of season, full year or full year schedule for Eden Fractal might look. And another benefit of this was that it would position Eden Fractal Season 12. If we continue doing our bi-weekly event schedule for Respect Games, which we currently are, then it would position Eden Fractal to conclude around early July, which after a summer break, then we'd come back and we'd have time for the first half of Season 13 before the holiday season, and then could do a break around Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve, and New Year's Eve, and then come back for the second half of Season 13 in 2027. And I thought more about how this could naturally align with some of our work that we've been doing for both like collaborative work on spec-driven development and testing out and getting feedback on applications, as well as us being able to go and work on infrastructure development and more focused work that we can each do on our own during the breaks. And then just in general, it's helpful to have some rest and reflection and personal planning time too. So yeah, there's more rationale there, and then thoughts about different things that can happen during the break, like how, of course, the Eden Fractal Telegram group will remain open and available for ongoing discussions. We could potentially propose ad hoc Eden Town Halls if we want to meet for Town Hall without playing a Respect game and without having one on the schedule. Tadas, you haven't done an ORDAO Fractal in a while, so you could potentially organize an ORDAO Fractal at some point.
Just for my reference, is this a break that we're proposing right now for 4 weeks? I guess I just didn't read thoroughly through the Telegram. If you wouldn't mind just reminding me.
Yeah, no worries. And actually, I just realized I probably missed a key detail, but this break is being this is just a draft proposal right now. I'm curious to hear feedback, but the proposal here would be that we would the Eden Fractal would take a 4-week break from regularly scheduled events, starting on March 26th, and then returning on April 30th. So there'd be 3 weeks more of events after today, and then there'd be 4 weeks off, and then we'd return for our second half of the season after that.
Yeah, that sounds like it could be powerful. I would love to do like a dedicated ORDAO, at least one of those weeks, if not two of them, I think it could be really powerful to, whether it be Tadas present or us just jump in and ask questions, or some of that co-working in between. I think it's a great idea. I think we may not have been getting as much participation recently in Eden Fractal other than, this core group of individuals. So I think it could be powerful to do a rest and reset.
Sounds good. Thanks for your inputs, all, and I agree. And I can continue sharing some more details as well, because I have a lot of thoughts. I thought about this a lot over the past days. And also, Zal has been hosting the Zal Fractal on a regular schedule for almost 2 years now. Way to go, Zal. And so it's also another place where people can have a weekly touch point with people in the Fractal ecosystem. That's on Mondays, 6 p.m. EST. And I noticed that a few people have reached out to Tadas this week, expressing interest in learning about ORDAO. And so I thought maybe it might be useful to have an ORDAO Fractal at some point soon, because it's been a while since that, and that could be a place to answer questions and provide some onboarding into the ORDAO implementation ecosystem too. And then there's also other community members like Eric and Timothy and Will and Judicial who are or might be hosting different events in the Fractal ecosystem too. And last break, actually, for Eden Fractal, we took a 3-week break in last summer, mid-season break for Eden Fractal, and Easy had hosted the Fractal Impact Concert. So there's kind of that precedent that we can go ahead and host other events if they want to as well. And then we had this idea of the flexibility clause where the council, so this we proposed to the council, the Eden Fractal Council, and we'd, my intention would be to probably approve it at next week's event, just so that we have a clear, have clarity about when the break will happen by next week, which would be the 12th, and then we could let people know about that going forward. But we'd also have some flexibility so that if we decide that we want to come back sooner or later, then we could do so. I thought about, Tadas and I had also discussed doing a 2-week break or a 3-week break, and I expressed that I'd prefer a longer break, especially to focus on the infrastructure stuff and also take some rest. A part of me thinks that a longer break could be helpful too, but I don't know. I think that 4-week break just sounded like the best amount that kind of balanced everything well. But there is that flexibility where even after the council approves it, Tadas and I discussed how we could approve with a clause saying that the Eden Plus Fractal Council could make a change in Telegram sometime throughout the break as well. So I think that's consistent with the rules of the Eden Plus Fractal process. So my proposal would be to include that kind of flexibility clause, and then probably put something out there like, say, a 4-week break, like I suggest here, just to have it on the calendar so people have an understanding.
When would the end of season 12 fall?
The end of season 12 would fall on, I think it said early July. I have another document that has more details about that. And so this document, the proposal, says that around early July, and I can give you a more specific answer in a moment after I just look it up. But it's something like July 5th or something, July 7th, I think. Yeah, so it would end on July 9th. At this pace, if we were to do 6 Respect Game events afterwards and end on the Respect Game event, then it would end on July 9th. And then traditionally we take a longer end of season break, so then we could take a longer summer break if we want to. There's also there's a lot of factors at play. Like, it might be advantageous at some point to do shorter breaks and more events when we have more of our infrastructure ready. Like, back to Zala's comment about not as much participation here at Eden Fractal, I think that's partially been intentional because we haven't been promoting as widely, because there's just a lot of infrastructure that needs to be built, and at some point I think it's going to make more sense to ramp up in terms of promotion and also the amount of events, and maybe shorten the length of the breaks. But at this time I think that focusing more on the infrastructure generally makes more sense. And so if we followed the precedent of doing a longer break, I think just our most recent break was, I think, 9 weeks long, or 8 weeks long in the winter. So if we did another end of season break that was 8 weeks long, which we might want to do, I'm not sure, but that would have us coming back in approximately early September, and then finishing the first half of season 13 in November, mid-November. And if it's helpful for you, Tadas, or anybody else, then I can share more details about that. Like, I have some projections that I worked on with the Claude about exactly what these dates would be. If you want to, I think those over. I know that this is the first time I think probably you're all seeing this document, so happy to share more details in the coming week, and you can also leave comments on it. We can discuss it more then, or over the week or next week too, if you want.
Well, I generally don't think it's worth trying to think too far ahead with the dates, because at some point we will get misaligned. So, and going forward, I would be open to sometimes like switch around the breaks, like not necessarily end the season on 12th event, maybe move it around. But anyway, right now I think 4-week break makes sense.
Okay, sounds good. Well, yeah, I'm open to changing the cadence of seasons. I do think it's nice how we have 12 event seasons, and that's nice for providing some predictability and consistency. But it doesn't have to be set in stone. And also, I think we can definitely quite easily, like an easy lever we can pull is just having either shorter or longer breaks depending on what we want to achieve. So, like as I was kind of explaining before, I think that once the infrastructure is more set up, we'll probably want to do more events. That'll probably be more useful at that point to do more respect games. And that might happen later this year or early next year. I don't know exactly when, but I agree with you. It's kind of difficult to forecast too far in the future. So I just kind of put that out there just as a general reference point that we can think about, but be open to change and not be too set in any direction. And yeah, I appreciate your feedback there, Tadas, and I suppose let me know if you have any other thoughts, either now or in the coming weeks. I know that you mentioned that at first you were thinking a shorter break, like 2 weeks would be better or something like that, because it's also valuable to have these events so that we can get feedback on new processes and tools that we've been trying. Like, for example, this first half of the season 12 has been really productive for testing out the respect trees with the topics proposals game and the contribution request game, and we've gotten a lot of valuable feedback and experimentation there. And also you've reintroduced the idea of Firmament, and we talked about that a lot, and we're talking about using spec-driven development for the app development, and there's all this stuff that really benefits from having these consistent touch points both in the town halls as well as Eden Fractal respect game events. So I see a lot of value in that, and I'm open to doing it differently too, if you see a lot of value in going in some different schedule. But I figure that's also partially what the flexibility clause can have. And as we discussed last week, there's also some value in having some time for focused work. And I think that we could probably take all the things that we've learned and kind of synthesize that and like kind of have some time to reflect on these things that we've learned over the past few months going into the second half of the season. But yeah, curious to hear your thoughts. If at any point you have any feedback, and if you do prefer a different length of break or anything like that, then feel free to let me know throughout the week, and leave any comments on the Notion document or in the chat or whatever. We can always talk about it more next week as well.
Okay, yeah, but I thought about it. Like, 4-week break might make more sense. Like, it makes sense to have 2 weeks before the season to maybe prepare something, and then yeah, if we also want to rest, have some time to rest, then yeah, that's why these other 2 weeks. So I think for resting and integrating all the feedback, everything, and preparing for next season, maybe 2 weeks would be a little too little. Yeah, so I think you should make this proposal for next event.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I'll review it. It's open for anybody in the community who is either here or might be watching this at some point or any feedback. But yeah, otherwise, I think I'll just go ahead and share this proposal during our Eden Town Hall event next week. And Tadas, you and I are we each have 2 seats in the council, so we can just approve it next week if we're still feeling good about it. And then that flexibility clause, I think that we'll probably do that as we agreed last week, so that we'll have flexibility if we want. But yeah, basically, it should be just a pretty quick and simple proposal that we can approve during next week's Eden Town Hall, and then we can discuss other topics as well during Eden Town Hall next week as well.
Okay.
All right. Should we move on to the next topic about matrix.org, or does anybody have any other thoughts about this spring break or anything else that is on your mind before we move on to the next topic? Okay, got a thumbs up from us all. Rosmari's been pretty quiet here listening in.
I have some ideas about SRT improvements.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know if we have something regarding matrix. We can discuss better. We can jump. I don't know.
Well, I'm happy to hear your ideas about SRT too. That's something we were discussing last week, and that was actually third on the topics in terms of receiving the most votes, whereas exploring matrix.org was second. But that's just a guide for us, so we don't have to follow that. And yeah, so I'm happy to talk about matrix.org at another time. I don't really have any specific thing to share. I mean, I could just I proposed matrix I guess a week ago or a week and a half ago, just because I've been diving into it and I'm excited to learn about it, and I think that there's a lot of exciting stuff for the Eden Fractal community and the Fractal ecosystem that we can learn from and build with. And I appreciate Tadas that you also looked into it and you found some good stuff about it and followed up. So we just have an open conversation on matrix.org whenever we're ready, but there's nothing really urgent there. We can also just kind of study that throughout the weeks and then bring it back up at a future event if and when the time is right, when we have a more specific thing. And if you want to discuss SRT improvements, then I'm happy to do that instead.
Yeah, so I just thought about your feedback and your ideas about SRT and other agenda games and priority games, whatever you call them. I read your other document, especially the part about SRT, and I haven't responded yet, but yeah, I can summarize my current thoughts here, I think, pretty well. So here is what so first of all, I think we didn't fully extract everything we can out of this experiment, and I would still continue. Well, as we thought, we continue with SRT. We just, last meeting, we said that maybe we won't create any contribution requests. But this week, I've again find contribution requests meaningful and helpful. So I suggest this perspective that I agreed that SRT is not does not properly represent all the contribution areas that Eden Fractal expects. I mean, contribution request side of SRT does not properly represent all the areas. And so I don't think you should promote it as such. But I do find it helpful to, although I do, first of all, I do see potential of such a game to at some point reach that point. And it might be end up being a different game with a different name, but anyway. Yeah, and but right now I do find it helpful to organize my own work to help me decide what to focus on. So yeah, so I will invite people to create this contribution request as well, and I think some of the other issues that we saw with this could be solved with two things. One is reports, cumulative reports, which would accumulate all the results from previous weeks, and another thing is to create to use it as an issue tracker, and don't create people should keep in mind that we don't have to create any item if they don't wish to upvote it in the list as it currently is. I think the previous games we played, it was a little bit too tedious because we tried to encompass, make sure that the poll encompasses all the areas. So yeah, I think we should scope it like this is we create contribution request if there is something that we think should be done or should be prioritized in the next few weeks or next few periods rather, or next 2-3 periods, something like that. So it's basically just a way to communicate that to the community that you would like it done, or it's a way to ask community if you should do it, that specific item. So I would suggest doing it like this. And you don't have to create any contribution request, but yeah. So that's my thought. And regarding the report, I already have this, just built it in a few hours before the meeting. I can share the screen.
Okay, sounds good. You have access to share? Ooh.
Yeah. looks pretty neat, but yeah, no, this is not. I don't think it's like something we want to show new people necessarily. I know you hate this name, Dan, and everything, but
I don't hate it. I just I just have a complicated relationship with it. I also, I don't know if you saw a comment that I left about like 3 days ago. I left a comment. I'm like, I kind of see some of the point of Synchronous Respect Trees name. So I don't know if you saw that most recent comment, but I just have thoughts on it.
Yeah. So anyway, so this is basically list of proposals ranked with cumulative scores, and cumulative scores are like explained here. It's basically sum of the scores from the periods with decay function. So it basically decays by half every period. I don't know if it's the best formula, but it's interesting, I thought of. Because yeah, I wanted something. I think we should weight it. I think we should give more importance to more recent votes, because as a community, as we develop, with time, we always learn new information. So new votes vote with more information. So therefore, I think new votes should be weighted more. Yes, so as you can see here, so basically, you can imagine that the most recent period is just cast score as it is, and the previous period is divided by 2, so reduced by 50%, and the period before that is just 1/4 of what the vote was. Yeah, and you also see descriptions here. You also see, in case descriptions change, you can see uh, how we changed here, for example. Yeah. Also per period breakdown, link to snapshot. Yeah, so that's just a single static HTML file, which got a little bit bigger. Maybe I will do it differently next time, but it works. And yeah, Claude did this most powerful version of Claude, and Runtsoft did this and pretty basically most of it the first time. Uh, I just had it to include descriptions, and it got a bit hard. It took some time, but yeah, need a better way to get the descriptions from chats or polls. But yeah, it works, and I think it's reproducible. So, like, meaning I could do this again for next period. Yeah, and regarding the future of the game, I think ideally next after the mid-season break, someone proposes or someone hosts a new game or new set of games with a new name, with new names and everything. So I know you want to change the contribution request name. I think for now, until mid-season, it would lead to more confusion if we change it now. But I think, again, after a break, would be a good time to start with a new, better game and or games, and that's the right time to change the names as well. I will publish this page tomorrow, somewhere under Fraps, I think.
Do you mind tagging me when you do that, Tadas? I would love to get a better read when I have some time and really look through it. It looks awesome.
Okay, sure.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Tadas, for working on this and sharing with us. Looking forward to also looking more into it when you share it and tomorrow, the coming days. And I appreciate you reading my article I shared with you too, my feedback on your articles regarding the potential evolution of the Synchronous Respect Trees game and the voting on the top proposals and contribution requests and stuff like that. And so just to bounce it back at you and make sure I have it clear, your suggestion or kind of proposal is to continue playing the contribution, the SRT game as we've been playing the version 1 for, I suppose, the remainder of this season, the next 3 weeks, and to keep on doing the topic proposals and contribution requests, and you're willing to facilitate it, and we'll still keep everything the same name and call it the same thing, but we'll just, for the next few weeks while we do this, we'll view the contribution requests as more tightly scoped issue tracker, basically, and we'll only propose things for specific issues that we want to see done, or either want to see done or want to have feedback whether it should be done in the next few weeks. As kind of like a short-term issue tracker, and because that has both immediate value and it also helps to test and gather more feedback from the experiment and this season, and then we can be able to view it in this dashboard. It's really cool, and I see potential for this dashboard to evolve. I appreciate you making this, because this is like I think it's something that's necessary for something like the SRT game or whatever it becomes to be more useful, basically, for people to be able to get that that information on what the community wants to do and discuss and have done and so forth. And then over the break, then we'll look at this, and we'll look at, think about what we have experimented with over this past 6 events or however long since we've been doing SRT v1, and then we'll consider the best ways to improve it going forward, including dashboard improvements and different ways of building it into an app and stuff like that, as well as different ways to brand it and maybe different ways to play it. Is that all right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Just one note regarding branding.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we should rebrand SRT V1. I think we should create a new name, a new game, assign it a name that works for both of us, ideally all of us. Yeah, and we should acknowledge, we should keep the SRT1 name and acknowledge it because it has led to better versions of new games. And not changing the names that we used for names for games that we used in the past. I think that will keep that chain of development, historical development here. I don't think we should promote SRTV1. I think it's an experiment that will lead to better games, but that's how I see regarding name.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I agree. And so I suppose when I was saying that we can change the branding, change how it works, we'd be changing, like we'd be taking things that we learned, taking the game dynamics and the rules and stuff like that, and then making a new game that takes all the lessons from it, and that would have a different name, and that would have some slightly different rules and stuff like that. But we would keep SRTV1 in case we ever wanted to play it again, or just as a historical reference that we could say, you know, between these months we played SRTV1, which led to X, Y, and Z, and so forth.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So yeah, I'm up for all that. So, and then with regards to the more specific scoping of contribution requests, then I think you said previously that you think that we shouldn't promote it, or that we shouldn't promote it in the context of it being like contribution. I know you had read what I said and taken that feedback into account. I don't remember exactly what you said, but basically one of my qualms with calling it contribution request is just that it seems like it could be like, you know, representative of all the contributions, and so I suggested calling it more like issue tracker in the future. And I don't want to keep it the same as is for the next few weeks, but for the next few weeks, should the Eden creators team like include anything about these contribution requests and the SRT in like the events, in the promotions that promote the events? And if so, how would we say that? Would we say like just like we could say that this also includes the SRT game, which includes the contribution requests, which are like specifically scoped contributions that community members have requested, and that way it's clear that they're not like, you know, all that the community is requesting, all the contributions that are helpful, but it's more clear that just that these are some specific things that the community that community members have requested. Or should we just not mention it at all in promotions? Or do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So somewhere in the comments you said something about yeah. Can you see this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, so since we said that we, in recent promotions, we said something like, since we are doing contribution requests, contributions that address what the community had requested will be especially valid. So I don't think this should be said.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, it's up to you.
Okay, so maybe just more plainly, because when we put that out, I was thinking, you know, this was meant to be an experiment where we're, you know, kind of, I suppose, requesting and providing a place for people to value all kinds of contributions. But then, yeah, as I explained in more of those comments, I thought that was like, you know, too much, because that could overshadow or dilute all the different kinds of contributions that people can have via the Respect game. So I explained that in more detail there, but I appreciate you reading that. And yeah, I suppose going forward for any promotions, for promoting it, we could just say like contribution requests for specific things that community members have requested or something like that. And that way it's not clear that it will be valued more or less. It just kind of more plainly things that people have requested in the community using this process.
Yeah, so And I think the main purpose of this is to help people figure out and make decisions about what to contribute next. It's not to influence results of respect game. I think it's rather a tool to predict what will be valued in the respect game, because core people who consistently participate in respect game, this is the core group that has respect, and this is the core group that can vote in these proposals. So it's more like it can be looked as a prediction tool. What should I contribute that will be valued in respect game? I'm not sure if I communicated that clearly before, but I think right now this is the case. So it's not that respect game should value these contributions more as much. Just that people who vote in these respect trees, they are likely to value same kind of contributions in the respect game too. So it's like a prediction tool and coordination.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And that might have the corollary that because those same people are the ones who are voting, that it will be more valued, but it's more so used to predict what they might value and used to encourage people to do those specific things when there's some issues, especially short-term issues that people want others to work on or want confirmation if they want to work on it themselves.
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. Is there anything else you want to say on this topic, Tadas?
Yes, I have just preparing a response for what I drew a diagram. Can you see it?
Yes. Looks like a beautiful hand-drawn artwork that you did here.
Yeah, that's Skyladraw.
Okay, yeah, I've been learning about that lately too.
Yeah, so cool. So anyway, this is the causal relationship. It's not that respect trees determine results. It's more like participants, core of participants are respect holders. They determine results both for respect game and respect tree. And that's why we are good prediction tool for what to contribute. And here by inform, I don't mean that we inform results of respect game. I rather mean that we inform contributions that respect holders do first of all. And although they could inform, if you have a new person and he does not know how to value things in respect game, it could he could use respect trees to basically get a sense about what others value in the community, but that's not required or anything.
Okay, well, thanks for explaining that and drawing that out, and yeah, that all makes sense to me. And I think that I think one of the things I wrote is that, well, I'd written a lot that as aligned with this, and like I expressed some concern about contribution requests warping rankings in respect games, and adding like more bureaucracy, and I think I mentioned somewhere that it'd be helpful when we write our intent documents to clearly explain the role of these kinds of contribution requests, whatever we want to call them, in the way that we're discussing now and the way that you're introducing it here. That makes it clear that respect trees are an optional game that people can play in the community to either propose things that they want done in regards to this contribution request aspect of it, or that they want to do and they want to see, like, have some prediction capacity or an understanding of what people will want to contribute, but that is optional. And ultimately, it's completely up to the participants in the respect game to determine the results of the respect game, and they could ignore those respect trees if they want to. And it's totally up to people to contribute however they want to. They can use the respect trees as inspiration or guidance for them to contribute, or they can just contribute however they want to, however they're inspired. And Respect Trees is this optional game, an optional tool that can help make the Respect game more precise and increase communication and understanding about what people want and what people will do. And it can be very useful for that in specifying contributions and things that people want to get done, and allowing people to provide more signal in an easy way to say, here's what I want to get done, or here's what I think should be done, and so forth. And that can overall make the community a lot more effective and efficient. But also, ultimately, it's up to the community, each specific breakout room, to play the Respect game and rank just whatever they think is most in alignment with Eden Fractal's mission and vision when they're ranking contributions in the Respect game. And if they want to, they don't have to look at the Respect Trees game at all. Or they can look at it however much they see it as valuable and useful. And it can help inform, but it doesn't need to help inform the Respect game rankings. So...
Yes. I agree with all of that. Although I think you also said about including this perspective in intent document. I don't know if I don't think we should do this for. I don't know if we should do this for agenda games, which like don't have any formal power over respecting, for example. See, if we don't mention it, it's by default. It has no power, and people can take into account all the information that they have, and Respect Trees and similar games will be a useful source of information, and we can promote that. But see, if we want to, if we mention it and define it in the core intent documents, then it means every time we want to change that, we will have to go through this whole process and so on. Maybe once we have a game that's really good, maybe then it would make more sense. But right now, the way I did this, the reason why I did not make it as a proposal, I just invited people to play, and worst thing that could happen is it doesn't work and no one uses information that it produces. So that's why it's harmless, and we didn't have to spend all of this time to align on a single game. We can just try with one version and look at all the information that we learn from. And yeah, I'm thinking about methods to align, to help community align on games like this, to coordinate that. But it's yeah. Rosmari?
Right. I think my volume is low. Is it?
No, it's okay. We can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, well, I'm curious. I have a few thoughts and ideas here on that, but so far from what you've played, like since you've started to play this Synchronous Respect Trees game, which I think that's what you're talking about, which shows the contribution requests. Like that's one of the polls that gets triggered. Created every 2 weeks. What are your findings from it? Has it been helpful? If you call it a game, has it been played and have you seen the usefulness of it to the extent that you've imagined?
I experienced usefulness. For me, primarily, it reduces cognitive load for me to try to decide everything myself. So there are, for example, multiple projects or areas I see potential in, and instead of trying to figure out what's the best path and what to do first, I just ask the community through this game. And community votes more for one path, and it's simple for me. It makes it easier for me to decide. Regarding participation, initially we had at the beginning of the season we had more participation. I think 3 or 4 people voted, and in the previous season where we played for a short time a different version of the game which inspired this one. We had at one moment some larger participation, but not larger, but I mean more than 2 people. Last few, last few, last few sessions, last few periods, we had basically me and Dan voted. Yeah, but right now people, for example, are asking me for help with ORDAO, and I don't know how to prioritize this with regards to other stuff I've been working on based on what community voted on. So this is a useful way for me to I can just ask people to create these new contribution topics for the stuff we want to discuss and contribution requests. And yeah, that also connects with my larger vision about how to make respect valuable. By listening to results from these games, in the sense that we contribute what these games asks us, we can make respect valuable because people will learn that through having respect they can direct the work that a group does. And if respect is valuable, that eventually should lead to more participation in Eden Fractal. Yeah, so that's in conclusion. I see a lot of potential. I found some help from it in terms of it making it easier for me to make decisions personally. Although when only 2 of us and Dan are participating, it's not very helpful. And yeah, it could work a lot better if more people participated. And yeah, and maybe part of that is making interfaces, user-friendly interfaces. Yeah, but that's basically my summary of what I think about it right now.
Okay, so am I understanding correctly that you have been getting some requests personally from maybe other participants that have joined Eden Fractal events or other Fractal events, and you're using the respect tree, the poll, which are the contribution requests poll, to redirect their requests and put them as proposals in that poll, so that the people who've earned respect can then prioritize them in that poll, so that way then you can sort of filter out those requests and put them through that poll, so that you can get more input from the community as to how to prioritize these requests. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's about that's a good summary. Although so far these requests have been mostly not through respect trees, but you're right. I would like to redirect them to respect tree, and that also another way in which I found synchronous respect trees helpful in particular is that they create a rhythm. There is a time where I think, for example, about priorities in general, because I'm also a voter in this respect tree, so I also can vote. I can make proposals. So there is a clear time frame, a window, in 2-week period when we create proposals, and so uh, that means I don't have to think about it all the time. I just think about it in that window, and then we vote, and then after voting, I just focus on contributions that we decided. So, that clarity about when to plan versus when to focus in on something, I think that's useful, and it's also might be useful if whole community is in that rhythm. Although I'm not sure, like, if that's something to experiment with. But anyway.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Yeah, the other thing I was thinking about is that we did have at some point a notion, Eden Fractal notion space where we did have some maybe way of tracking potential ideas for how community members can contribute to the mission of Eden Fractal, for example. If I'm not mistaken, we did at some point. I think Dan was working on that a few years ago, maybe a year, and we were at some point using that to track, and because I see how Notion has a lot of the functions that with the polling, although that snapshot has, and maybe some more advanced filtering, and in some case to replicate even maybe the report that you did today, that you presented. Although I don't know how much of that is now automated and it's just easy for you to just re-render in a few weeks' time. Maybe the foundations of that report that you just showed is now done, and it's now easy and fast for you to like rerun it. So, so that's probably just useful to continue doing if it makes sense. Though I was also thinking how Notion can maybe serve like the contribution request hub that may probably not need to be updated or proposed every 2 weeks, or maybe could be played, but Notion has these pages that can retain information and be easily editable about potential contributions, whereas I think you recreate, a community member recreates the contribution poll every 2 weeks, which can add some manual work, and I think the editing features of snapshot are generally really less comprehensive compared to Notion. And I think the report that you presented today, the main purpose for that was, I think, to track these open and closed, were they called, like issues or something that were called, or the contributions that have been filled or completed. And it had other features like I think ratio of these like weighted voting depending on the periods, and which I don't know if Notion can do, and like how complex that is to do. But I think the main purpose for that was to track like old issues, like, or old like things that have been mentioned, that have been completed, which also I think Notion can also track. But anyway, I'm just thinking about automation and like these are my thoughts on that.
Yeah, these are the right questions, and what I was already thinking about a lot. And the main purpose, one of the main purposes of these reports I just showed is to solve one of the key problems you mentioned, that we have to repropose every topic, every contribution request that we want to keep available for the next meeting, we have to repropose. And right now, you would not necessarily have to repropose every week. You could every period you can just use this cumulative report, and you would just repropose if you want to vote it up. If you really want to vote it up, and you really think that this is a priority for the next few periods. So it's kind of lightens that problem with having to repropose. And regarding Notion, Dan has talked about it. Dan could talk about it more, but yeah, we thought about implementing respect trees in Notion, and the key idea is that we will want to weight items by respect, and that's the primary reason why we are using snapshot, because we can already do it. And then regarding two-stage structure, where we first all propose stuff and then we create polls and then vote, I think I learned that there might be some benefits to that. But like you said, we could do it in Notion too. But again, for me, it was easier to do this with Telegram and snapshot and this generate this report. It's simply easier way to do this. If someone comes up with a system that makes it work in Notion, I might use it too.
Thanks, Rosmari, for all the thoughts and questions. Great to hear your voice. So there's also in the chat there. And thanks, Tadas, for all the thoughts. It's a great discussion about synchronous respect trees and lots of different angles. And I had some comments that I've been writing some notes on over the past 5 or 10 minutes. So I could jump into that and share some thoughts on here. Although, of course, if anybody else wants to continue any thoughts first, then go ahead and jump in. But if not, I'll just go ahead. So, yeah, I suppose there's two different kinds of topics that have been brought up here that I can comment on. The first one is what Rosmari was just bringing up regarding Notion. And we also discussed this a good amount at the last event, I think, or to some extent, maybe 2 events ago, I showed off a quick version of a Notion based respect trees game where I just put the amount of votes from snapshot into Notion, and I did that after the first week, 3 weeks ago or something like that, and I did that manually just because I figured I would just see how it looked, and if it'd be useful I could pull it up on the screen. And so maybe I'll just pull it up because Tadas went away from the camera, so I feel a bit lonely now. I feel like just sharing a screen might be helpful. But yeah, also in regards to what Rosmari mentioned before about me creating something in Eden Fractal Notion, so the Optimism Fractal Notion was actually a lot more detailed than the Eden Fractal Notion. And the Eden Fractal Notion never really had any sort of contribution tracker or anything like that. The Optimism Fractal Notion had, and still has, a bunch of tasks and projects to be done and to be completed, but there was never any. I had a basic system, and actually I was thinking about this back then too. Maybe I'll go to optimismfractal.com too, and find this Notion page. Because these are kind of 2 different versions of Notion sites, which are kind of early versions of what we could eventually turn into something like Firmament as well. It's not working now. Maybe I'll find that up. No, it is working actually. So yeah, the Eden Fractal Notion page is kind of short. We have some strategy documents here, and then there's some meeting notes from a while ago. It needs to be organized better at some point, probably, if we're going to start using it more. And then there's some projects and tasks, which I do use fairly often. Just put some projects or tasks that are related to the community here. And then I had created this Eden Fractal contributions database and associate Eden Fractal contribution request database just to see how it would look here. And then I added this 1 week of contribution requests and the amount of votes and stuff in a database. And then back in the Optimism Fractal community Notion, this has a lot more projects and tasks and more organization, which I suppose can eventually be ported over to Eden Fractal to whatever extent it might be useful. There's education hubs and development hubs that I started working on, and then there's actually this project that Tadas created that might be similar called Create Tools and Processes to Track and Prioritize Projects and Tasks for Optimism Fractal. And I had like tagged all these projects with different tags, and then I had an upvote function too where people could like upvote it. But that was the best I was able to do at the time because there was no respect weighted voting at the time. And then I think I had some maybe database where you could see like you could probably sort it, I guess, by the amount of upvotes it has. But this was like a project and task tracker in a way where each project had its own project and its task. And then I had curated some stuff for this specific project that Tadas created. I added some tasks about OPF trees or respect trees and so forth. And then alongside this, we also did have, so there's a whole bunch of projects here. There's like a lot of projects. I went to town during this time. And then we also had Optimism Town Hall topics, and we tried this at Eden Fractal too. We called it Tropics at the time. We had a nice little giraffe as a mascot for that, and we had an upvote system. This was kind of like a version of agendas in a way, or the topic selection system where we had topics in Notion, and then we'd upvote. Again, there was a limitation where there's no, there's just one person, one vote, so it's not really fractal democracy rooted. But I also done pretty significant research into this. I remember 2 years ago into how to get the respect weighted votes into Notion, and at the time I saw a path to do it, but it required a lot of development work. Now it probably wouldn't be too difficult to do this kind of thing, and so that's something that we can potentially explore and might be useful, because Notion is a really good like front end app and it's easily accessible and so forth. I did a lot of research actually this past week into comparing Notion with Obsidian and with just uploading things to Git, GitHub, and then HackMD and all these different tools that we can use for what we're calling Firmament, which is like the community kind of repositories and places where we can keep information that's relevant to the community, like intent documents and specifications and respect trees, as I'm seeing it. Just give it like a quick high level overview. And I think that it makes most sense currently to keep on doing it on Snapshot like we're currently doing, because Snapshot makes it really easy to do these weighted polls. And then in Telegram is also nice because people are in Telegram more than any other place. Like even the Notions, even though it's nice to use for a lot of reasons, people use Telegram more, like way more in the Eden Fractal group than they've ever used the Eden Fractal Notions, because it's it's easier to just write a message there. And I think we can start using OpenClaw agents to automate the posting from Telegram into Snapshot. And then it seems like Tadas had built some sort of AI facilitated tool there to facilitate it, to put it into that dashboard. So I think that I'm interested to see how other respect trees games could work. Josh said something about Reddit style of respect trees that could work with like an asynchronous version of respect trees, and that prompted me to learn a little bit more about Mastodon and like open source Reddit alternatives. There's one called Lemmy that's interesting. So there could be other kind of open source software, and now with AI tools, all those open source frameworks and tools have they kind of open up more possibilities for us. But I think that that's worth exploring. But the current workflow seems to be working pretty well, where we just post things in Telegram, and then it is pretty tedious, like to copy and paste the polls from Telegram and post it there each week and stuff like that. So that's like a pretty big issue with it right now, and that's one of the reasons why I want to take a long break, because I think that OpenClaw can help with that a lot. If we could just automate that, and we can be like, hey, OpenClaw agent, just repost that, and then at the end of the week, OpenClaw takes that and puts it into a snapshot poll, and that'll take a bit of original development work, but it's definitely possible to do that. So that's one thing that can just make the whole experience better with this Synchronous Respect Trees kind of game. And then I think that maybe the best path is to use Synchronous Respect Trees for the voting on Snapchat. It would be nice if people could vote on easier too, like in Telegram. Like I know Zal built in a voting in Discord chat that I think uses Zal Fractal Respect directly in polls in the Discord, if I'm not mistaken. So ideally, if we could have it all in one place, that would be great. I see Zal's putting up confetti, but for the time being, I don't know how to do that in Telegram, or if that's how big a priority that is. And just using Snapshot works pretty well for it's one extra step. You got to go log in and then vote, but it is like specifically designed for this kind of weighted polls. So that's something that we could do, where we just have it automated posting from Telegram and it goes into Snapshot, and then you could do respective weighted voting, and then you could potentially use Notion alongside other things as front ends for that. Like Tadas built this dashboard, and potentially that could also populate Notion for people who want to view it in Notion. And yeah, I could refer back to that research. And also, I think there's some reason to use other things like, say, just raw Markdown files and CSV files and stuff like that instead of Notion for more community independence, as we discussed too. So I think it'd be good if we could use both Notion and some sort of more independent system as well that's more open source and less proprietary. But we can also just see how it goes. So yeah, some thoughts there. I see Tadas shared a link here, and Zal said he's got to roll out here in 8. Thanks, Zal. If there's anything you want to share, then feel free. And yep, and Rosmari said that was the Optimism Fractal notion that she was thinking about. I'm going to open up whatever links that Tadas shared here about snapshot settings, I guess this is, and also the protocol, the docs for the protocol validation. Tadas, do you want to speak to what you're sharing here in the chat?
Yes, the reason I brought it up in relation to an idea to use an agent to manage this process, and in particular to create a snapshot proposal. So this is something to keep in mind. Will the agent be able to create proposal?
Okay, so these are kind of like, and these are ways that you can validate, like, because also in the settings, I suppose maybe this is what you shared with me, but I remember there was like a setting where I can set admins who have access to make proposals and stuff like that, because I'm the person who created the snapshot space. Then, and I think I said you as an admin, or like there's also like, I don't know, like an author permission and stuff. So maybe that's what I'm looking at right here. Yeah, and there's like only authors can propose, and so basically these can be things that we can refer to and perhaps give to an LLM to say like, hey, we want to give OpenClaw agent ability to make proposals. In order to do that, I think we probably need to give it a wallet in some way. It doesn't need to be like the most secure wallet because it's not going to hold money probably, because you can just make proposals for free. But we would need to figure out some way to give it a wallet, and then we would need to give it, you know, these links, or perhaps read these links ourselves to just understand how it works, and then program it to say, hey, whenever people make a post in Snapshot, you know, at the end of the week, go and take all those and put them into the Snapshot poll or something like that. And then there could eventually be another agent, or the same agent, who then takes everything that's on Snapshot and then posts that into Notion, or post that into however Stas built this dashboard, or some other sort of kind of front end in a way that allows people to see it over time.
Yes, that's right. I just wanted to bring that up because in my automation ideas, that's one of the main problems. Well, I haven't looked into details about how to set up Notion settings so that it would allow people who don't have any respect to make proposals. Because as it is right now, as I understand, you have to have some minimum amount of respect to make a proposal. Yeah, and you don't want to give your private keys to an agent.
To make a proposal in Snapshot, you mean, or to make a proposal on Telegram?
It's Snapshot.
Yeah, well, there is a way that, so I'm pretty sure it'd be trivial for me to just set an agent as a, as like an admin.
Yeah, okay, but we don't have to go deep into that. I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that'd be pretty simple. So even if it has zero respect, it can still post on there. Okay, cool. So, and then there's also, there's a lot of work that's being done for agents to have wallets too. I know that Coinbase recently released some sort of standard, so that's something that I think isn't, it's definitely possible now as well. And then that can make the whole Synchronous Respect Trees work better, because it was a little bit of a frustrating experience having to like repaste it, and I forgot one, and then I actually did that twice. I forgot 2 things and I had to redo it. And then also there's that limitation that I identified in the Eden Fractal Telegram chat, that snapshot only allows you to make 10 polls or 10 options per poll. And if you get verified, which takes some time, maybe like, I don't know, 20 minutes of work or something like that, to like go through the process and send them an email, and it takes a few days for them to verify it, then you get to have 20 options per poll. But there's still that limitation. Unless you pay like $500 a month, then you can get 1,000 per poll. So that's also another open question for future versions of Synchronous Respect Trees, like how that would work. If we're not going to pay the $500, then we probably still run into that limitation at some point soon. But that was also one of the reasons for having it. If we're just focusing more narrowly on issue tracker, and then potentially we do different Synchronous Respect Tree or other games for projects or strategic focus areas or whatever else, then that would also help to remedy that problem too, because then there'd be more polls with less options each, presumably. But as the community grows, though, and especially people get excited, sometimes Tadas, me, Timothy, we've all gotten excited and made like several polls or several options at once. So at some point, as the community grows, like it would run into those issues. And I suppose with enough funding, you can get you can make it worth it to do that $500 a month thing, or you can just build our own solution by that point. But that is also a current limitation.
How do you keep track? How do you keep track of the previously proposed proposals? They just stay in the snapshot poll, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, Tadas' thing that he just built is maybe the best place to look at that now. I mean, I manually do that one thing in Notion, but that's not, I only did it for 1 week. You can just go into the snapshot and you can go to, period 135, 134, and so forth. We actually typed 134 twice by accident there, but this one's supposed to be period 133. And so you can go into all the periods back to 130 when we started doing this, and that's maybe the easiest way. But then Tadas's, or you can go to Telegram, but that won't have the votes. And then Tadas made that dashboard that also shows all the most recent 3 weeks all in one place.
But that's how often does it? How long does it take to refresh that?
Yeah, so the way it's done currently, and first of all, I just did this for the first time a couple of hours ago. So it's just AI generating an HTML file. I gave it an archive of our chat messages because I'm not sure if it could read the chat directly. And I gave it links to, or rather link to our snapshot space, and basically specified the problem, and it generated this HTML file that I screenshot. I had to ask it to make some adjustments, but yeah, I maybe I will create a workflow file, basically a Markdown document that specifies the algorithm for any agent to do this. But that's how it. The next time it should take even less time. But again, I think we will change the rules of the game, so it's not worth working too much on this toolchain. And in general, that's my, I guess, overview regarding Notion versus these tools that I'm using. I think this game needs a facilitator at this stage. These kinds of game needs facilitators at this stage, and I think it's best to just allow facilitator to choose his tools, the ones which allow him to build it the fastest. And I just had one thought about Firmament that. Yeah, I have this idea of consensus miner or consensus builder. So basically a person who would invite people to play some kind of game, and the final output of that game would be a block or commit that would contain all the basically consensus result of community. And this way we can basically choose different consensus builder, different consensus miner, either periodically or period by period. Right now it seems like maybe every 3 months or something would make sense, but we can. I'm not suggesting any time frame right now, but this idea that we choose a person who facilitates a game, until we come up with a game that works well enough and it's worth building a full app for. That just does not need any facilitation.
So I agree with what you said there about people facilitating, but I was kind of confused about this consensus builder thing, or consensus finder, and I see Rosemary's unmuted too. So I don't know if Rosemary you want to follow up there, but if you did, then go ahead.
Let's first hear about the consensus builder or finder.
Yeah, so I don't know if it makes sense to talk about it without
You went right in the face. Time to hide. Yeah. Saul's out. He said he had to go.
A new game or something like that.
Yeah, is this a new game, or
By the way,
did you want to talk about this?
Contribution.
It's what I anyway. Once I share my next Firmament idea, it will become clear. But it's then you will understand it as it's an analogy of block producer and a blockchain.
Yeah.
So, and with weekly or bi-weekly blocks, that would simply be the person who builds the next commit, next block.
Ah.
And it's by person I mean he could use an agent, or he could use an app, or it's up to him. But it's like the way in EOS block producers, right? Typical users should not care about the infrastructure that block producer uses, although for governance some people care, right? But it's part of his infrastructure, and yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and that reminds me too. EOS had about a year ago or something like that, they came out with the Savannah upgrade, which separates the roles of the block producer and the block finalizer. I don't know if you followed that at all, but that was interesting. They're talking about how they could use different consensus processes and split them up. And I think there might also be some sort of analogy with Ethereum validators, or I don't know exactly how that works. But basically, it made me think that, and I was thinking about this too when I recorded that audio note that led to this Evolving Respect Trees article, or maybe it was a different article, I'm not sure, but there was a little thing about like a remission system that I came up with there that we talked about briefly last week, and it made me think what you were just saying, that we could potentially have it like where, like my idea was that the Eden Plus Fractal Council could ratify and finalize blocks in Firmament, basically, in a way, but they don't have to be the one, and they're not really well suited, the council itself, to propose new Firmament blocks in a way, because like the time that the Eden Plus Fractal Council has, it only has 1 hour a week, 1 hour every 2 weeks, and it's like the highest concentration of like intelligence that we can point at a problem, that all the counselors are like thinking about something really deeply and deliberating and talking about it, but we have to use it very wisely because we can't talk about all these different like minor issues. And so my idea was that, you know, like anybody can propose, say for example, a new block in Firmament, which in case Rosemary you haven't been following Firmament, or anybody, you know, in the community, like basically this could include things like new respect trees or new intent documents or new specifications that we want to follow, new things we want to agree to, eventually new website pages or whatever. People can propose those as like text that they want to add to the block of Firmament, so to speak, but then the Eden Plus Fractal Council could be the finalizer in a way. So I don't know if that's related to the game that you were thinking about, or this kind of block proposer or block creator idea, but I can see some sort of analogy there where it's like the council ratifies and reviews things that people already propose. It finalizes it, but anybody can go ahead and like propose a new addition to the block of, you know, all the data that Eden Fractal has consensus over.
Yeah, so that would be separation of block creator and block finalizer.
Yeah.
No, I thought about it, but right now, well, that's what I'm currently working a lot on is consensus process that this chain would use. And currently, that's not a path I'm taking. I don't remember why I uh, all the reasons why I took it that way, but um, there is a lot of options here, and which brings me to next. Another thing is that Firmament is not cannot be a protocol. It's a design space for protocol. It's an abstract idea. It's a design philosophy, not a. So what I'm going to propose, I won't call it Firmament.
So do you mean like kind of like how blockchain isn't a protocol? Blockchain is a design space for protocols, and then there's the Ethereum protocol and the EOS protocol and all these different protocols within it. But Firmament is kind of more like a overarching concept, and whatever you propose can be a type of firmament in a way, or an implementation of firmament.
I guess that's not a bad analogy. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Well, yeah, I could see that in a way. I mean, I'm curious to see what you propose, and I mean, it could be confusing too. We have a lot of names, so if we have more names, then that might be confusing for people. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what you'll suggest, and I could see it working in different ways. Like to me, it seems like it makes logical sense. What I mentioned about like a council kind of ratifying changes or finalizing them, but I guess it could work in different ways as well, and maybe those can all be different types of firmament. So yeah, I don't know. Do you want to share any more on that here, or you want to introduce the big?
It's not. It's just I'm nothing. Nothing. I wouldn't feel comfortable sharing yet. So it's not big. But regarding Eden Plus Fractal Council finalizing things. Well, first of all, that would not allow us to use this chain for coming up and passing new consensus process for changing the Eden Plus Fractal process.
What was the last thing you said that wouldn't allow us to use Firmament process for coming up with a new consensus process if we use the Eden Plus Fractal consensus process?
I mean, if the main authority in the Firmament process is Eden Plus Fractal, then the Firmament cannot host a process that changes that process.
Well, why couldn't say if the Eden Plus Fractal Council said, "Hey, we have a new process. We're going to call it Eden Plus Fractal" or something like that, and it's much better than Eden Plus Fractal. Then we're going to just do that. And then they would put that in the firmament. They'd basically update the rules, like the specifications of Eden Plus Fractal. I imagine, in a month from now, we'll have specifications that say this is the tripartite governance structure of Eden Fractal. There's ORDAO, there's Eden Plus Fractal as a legislative process. There's the respect game and so forth. I don't know if you're envisioning this differently now, because I know you mentioned you and I post about firmament. We haven't really discussed much yet in the contribution request, but basically we'd have that intent document that, as we discussed last week, there's kind of like this hierarchy of intent documents where there's one like main intent document for Eden Fractal, and then there's specifications of different games or processes, and so there'd be a specification for respect game and for Eden Plus Fractal and stuff like that, and then that would all be kind of like hosted in the firmament in a way, where we would have all these markdown files expressed and maybe save it on GitHub or wherever else we decide, and then maybe I lost my train of thought. I think I don't know if I had something specific I was trying to say, but basically, like the community would use that consensus process, that tripartite governance process, with the legislative process being like the main way to determine these things. To say, hey, we're going to make a new, better version of the intent document for Eden Plus Fractal, and now it has these 3 extra rules, or it's totally different or whatever, and then that would change how the firmament is governed in a way, and the ORDAO would also help support that in a way, because those changes would be like maybe pinned in a hash on chain once every 2 weeks, once every period, or something like that.
The thing you're not taking into account that yet is verification and difficulty in verifying the whole chain.
I'll just verify it. I'm just joking. I'm just joking. Go ahead.
That's why I think process like Eden Plus Fractal is too complicated, and and also it does not have like it's not hosted anywhere, and it's people would need to parse either videos or chat messages. It could be interpreted differently, and so on. And yeah, we need. I think the protocol should be such that anyone could verify the chain easily, even without using an agent. So the rules should be. I'm currently looking for rules that would be that simple, like amount of votes on a particular hash, amount of respect voting on a particular hash.
Okay, well, that could work if it's more into the ORDAO, I guess. People are voting with respect on chain. My prior idea that I remember I shared, we had a discussion back at the top of the Eden Plus Fractal implementation plan back in August that I briefly referred to in one of the topic proposals last week. And we've never really fully continued that chat. We just had like 18 comments back and forth in the Hub of Notion. But I brought up this idea of objective versus subjective finality, and how, in my view, Eden Plus Fractal consensus process is more similar to Bitcoin than something like EOS, in that with Bitcoin, people say as a general rule, you can have basically 100% certainty that a Bitcoin transaction will be final after 6 blocks. But if you're ever sending, $1 million or whatever of Bitcoin, then you should definitely wait 6 blocks before you call it as settled. And Bitcoin never reaches 100% finality, ever, really. It just gets more and more close to being 100% final. And after 1 block, it's maybe like 90% final. And then after 2 blocks, it's 92% final and stuff like that. And then after 6 blocks, it's like 99.999% final. So they're like, okay, that's good enough, basically. Whereas something like EOS, and I don't know if Ethereum works like this, but it has like an objective finality, where once that block is over, and in EOS this happens like every second or whatever, like 500 milliseconds or something like that. Like every block producer has confirmed this is final. It's not changing, and that also is some other blockchains. So my thinking was that Eden Plus Fractal is inherently a subjective consensus mechanism, and inherently has this same property of subjective finality that Bitcoin does, or similar at least, where the Eden Plus Fractal Council will be pinning its hash of what it decides on ORDAO each week, and then if you're 6 periods away, then you can assume that that's like basically it. And it might not even take 6 periods; it might just take 2 periods or whatever. But that's the way it would work in that way.
You're thinking of correct way, but that's in the beginning you contradicted what you said here, where you said Eden Plus Fractal process as finalizer. They would not be finalizing blocks.
Yeah, well, the term that I first came up with was ratifier, actually. So that might be a better term. So there's a block producer and a block ratifier, and then it's never technically final. But it's assumed to be final once it's been ratified by enough councils.
Yes. So, but it would not be. It would be probabilistic finality for someone verifying the chain. That would be probabilistic finality, not absolute, but absolute or objective finality.
Yes, but people treat Bitcoin as basically objectively final. Once it gets to like 10 blocks out or whatever, they're like, this is done, basically. Like there's people treat it as if it's finalized, basically. So for like practical purposes, it becomes finalized, basically, but it's only ever probabilistically final.
So you previously said something about your priority. So but this is a consensus process. It means to achieve something. Like we even want to change the Eden Plus Fractal consensus process. So I'm not sure if it should be a priority to use Eden Plus Fractal for this chain. Because I see potential for a chain which would help us I see many over the last few weeks. I came up with many ideas. One for how to facilitate and build better and better respect tree games and similar alternative games, and how to arrive at consensus which games to use. So kind of a chain for building consensus, more oriented towards building consensus. Then another alternative is more similar to your idea, where we would basically use it for intent documents, basically whole intent directory. I think it would be intended that it would probably be called intent directory. Maybe one for document, but more documents. And yeah, that would be basically consensus process of this directory would basically judge if the blocks are if blocks represent the true consensus state of the community. Yeah, and it was too hard for me to think about both solutions. I'm not sure which to prefer, which to focus on first, because it would take, I think, different consensus processes to optimize for these different problems.
Okay, well,
again, like I said, it's that's why I refer to it as design space, because there are many options. And the beauty about Firmament idea is that people can create blockchains and create their governance processes. It's not up to developer. It's not just developers who can do that anymore. And that's why, and I see people, they want to create systems like this. They want to create, so that's why I see no hope of coming up with a protocol that would fit everyone, every organization. So it would at best fit Eden Fractal. And even then I see it maybe different chains for different parts of Eden Fractal maybe. But I'm not sure.
what was the last thing you were saying? Did you finish that thought?
Yeah, I said I'm not sure.
Oh, not sure. Okay. So yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. So I'm curious to hear what other kinds of consensus mechanisms you're thinking about, or these different chains. Feel free to share some documents with me. I'd be happy to read them. I'm very curious to learn about what you're thinking of here. I do see Firmament as like this. Ever since you announced it a few years ago, it was just like this very new idea that didn't really fit into any traditional box, and also the way that you expressed it in this new contribution request. You made it sound really good, and like you're like that's not all, and it's like this new kind of way that maybe next generation of DAOs can work, and you brought up some really good stuff, which natively works at an abstraction level, fully understandable to all, not just smart contract developers and stuff. And I won't read it out here, but this whole section made me excited when you first started. And I'd like to. It would be nice to schedule a discussion about Firmament more deeply, because we kind of keep touching on it in these recent calls. So maybe in the coming weeks you can write out some of the ideas you have and then present it again, and we could have a discussion just specifically just devoted to its Firmament, maybe before the break if that works, or when we get back from the break. But I'd love to hear more about your ideas about how these potentially work, and I really enjoyed rereading the Fractal Blockchains article as well. So yeah, it is this kind of new kind of concept. It's not just a blockchain, it's like a fractal blockchain in a way. It's a different kind of protocol, or a different way that things could work. So I see that, and yeah, I'm interested, I'm curious to hear your other ways that it could work. And to me, what makes the most sense is we should work with what Eden Fractal has. And yes, we could change the Eden Fractal consensus processes, but I think that they're quite good right now. and we also don't want to risk making it too complex or changing too quickly in ways that just don't make sense to community members. And like we previously discussed, like I think it's generally good to, and I think you've made this point a few times, like use your existing consensus process to improve your consensus process. That comes with legitimacy and so forth, and using a democratic process. And so the way I've envisioned it, which I think makes the most sense, is like I was just going to explain, kind of where we use the Eden Plus Fractal consensus process to ratify any changes. And then I think earlier in, like maybe 5 minutes ago, you were expressing like sort of a question about how this would happen in practice, and you said that what I said might have some sort of conflict. But I think it basically would be like the Eden Plus Fractal consensus process would, at some point, if we came up with some better consensus process to serve as the root kind of consensus process for determining how the firmament is organized or how new things are added to the firmament, then the process to do so would be to make a proposal to the Eden Plus Fractal Council, discuss it, and get approval from the council members, and then that would ratify it. And then the next week, or the next period, if the Eden Plus Fractal Council still believes that, basically, it would still operate by that ratified new system, and maybe it wouldn't be called Eden Plus Fractal anymore. Maybe it would be called Eden Fractal Plus Plus or something. Then if the council is now using the Eden Fractal Plus Plus process, then that's like another block which further finalizes it. And then if it does it again for another period, then it further finalizes it. And then at some point, it'll be just assumed like this is, and it won't happen that long, like maybe 1 period, maybe 2 periods, people just be like, this is the process now. People can always fork it if they want to, but that won't be what Eden Fractal does, because Eden Fractal will abide by its consensus process. I mean, I guess people could fork Eden Fractal and go with Eden Fractal Classic or something like that, like people did with Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. But just like the core of Eden Fractal will follow Eden Fractal's protocol and use the Eden Plus Fractal consensus process to make any changes to its consensus process with regards to how it runs Firmament and stuff like that. And then that will achieve practical finality by it being ratified once and then being continually observed in practice by future councils. And by practice, I also mean like continued, usage of it in a way. Like, presumably there'd be maybe some element where it'd be pinning its results to ORDAO or something like that. So it'd be, like pinning whatever it needs to, hashing the results, hashing the state of the firmament on chain via ORDAO. And if it continues doing that week after week, period after period, then that will be further proof that this is what the Eden Plus Fractal Council is, like doing, and that's what the new process of Eden Fractal is. And then there's always the additional videos and AI agents that can go back and further verify it, but that alone will be enough verification that it's been ratified and then continually practiced by the council. And then, I think the Eden Plus Fractal process is really good. It has some flaws and it could be improved, but it's quite good, and it might just deserve to be, continued as is for a long time. But I don't see any immediate need to make any major changes for it. But maybe there's a better process. But in the meantime, I see that the Eden Plus Fractal Council, as I was explaining before, like it's this extremely high collective intelligence nexus in a way that it only has the capacity to meet for 1 hour every 2 weeks, but it has me and you and any other delegates like really talking about it, and just all of our focus, brain, and energy and attention that we think about from proposals over the past 2 weeks. So it's like the best thing that we have for making these kinds of decisions. But then we can have kind of sub processes before that, like that offload energy from and offload some of that computational power in a way from the Eden Plus Fractal consensus process, like things that we don't need to deliberate in detail during the meeting. Then we'll just say like, hey, maybe we'll trust this other council or this other person to do this, or this agent to do this or whatever. And maybe we just need to ratify to make sure everything's okay. And like it can kind of outsource its roles. So you can kind of think of like Eden Plus Fractal as like the neocortex of the brain, and then it can outsource, other roles that is kind of like more automated stuff that it's just making sure that everything's going according to plan, but it doesn't need to talk about it. And then if any one of those processes becomes better than Eden Plus Fractal, then perhaps that can be the new replacement for the cortex, the new replacement for the neocortex of the brain, if you're following my analogy with the brain metaphor. And then it can use its process to say, hey, this is the new Eden Plus Fractal process we're calling Eden Fractal Plus Plus, and now this is the process that oversees every other process.
You know, you might have solved it for me. Like, you might be right. Previously, I was chasing two things, maybe a bit too much. I really liked the idea of making it sound similar to Bitcoin. I think that would attracted a lot of people. And for me, the analogy would have been like the analogy of proof of work would be respect. So instead of a chain which has the most computational work in it, you would have a chain which has the most respect voting on it. But then you get into this problem where if by creating a block you have power to mint new respect, you can mint thousands of respect to yourself, and then from then on you can confirm with that respect new blocks, and then you can basically have a winning chain.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried to solve it by only allowing all the respect holders to vote. But still, it would introduce complications just for Eden Fractal, just because it would require a new process to vote on blocks. And yeah, what you just said about what I said in the past might pinpoint the issue why it's so hard for me to come up with whole chain specification, is because I'm trying to create a totally new consensus process. Maybe just first try using what we already have to build the next consensus process. I thought we want to change Eden Plus Fractal anyway, so I was looking out for a process that would facilitate that. But yeah, maybe Eden Plus Fractal could do it. So I still have to think about it, if the security of this, but see, one doubt is that if someone would cast the doubt on legitimacy of one block in a chain valid confirmed by Eden Plus Fractal process, someone would say that this vote from this delegate came after the window of voting ended, and then we could claim all the blocks after that are invalid, because the council that came after that invalid block is not a legitimate council. Yeah, because the confirmers of blocks would also have to confirm the previous blocks which elected new councils. Yeah, that's the same problem.
Did you want to elaborate? I kind of missed the problem.
Wait a second.
Okay.
So old council would have to confirm a block that elects new council.
No, I mean technically, if the town, well, I don't know how it'd be, but right now we have the town hall before the respect game, so the new council would, I guess the old council could maybe confirm its block for any proposals that it approved at the town hall right before the respect game, and then they would be confirming their block right before they step down, basically, that council, and then the new council would, step up within the hour afterwards. They'd be elected.
Yeah, they would be elected, and then the block would be produced during the time until the next meeting, and then Yeah, you end up with the situation where council has to confirm its own election.
Yes. Yeah, I believe so.
So I'm not sure if that's secure.
Well, at the same time, the ORDAO would also be also confirming their election too, because the community members in the breakout rooms would also be posting the delegates on chain as well, and that could hypothetically be posted on multiple different chains if needed.
I prefer to not depend on ORDAO specific ORDAO deployments, but maybe that's a path.
Well, it'd be providing additional assurance. It wouldn't necessarily be depending on it, because also, like, I don't know, I suppose during the meetings, the people could, maybe you could think of it as the primary thing is just that people are going along with it during the meetings, and they're not like, hey, these delegates are wrong. Then they're not approving their own firmament block that shows their delegates, even though they're not. Like, there might be some conflict and people just mentioning that during the meeting, if not. But then the ORDAO would provide additional assurance and verification pathways to determine who is the right counsel. And if there is any conflict during the meeting, then they could use that ORDAO as a way to resolve that. And I don't know why not use ORDAO as a way to verify. I think it's probably a good fitting for it, a good fitting use case for it here.
Yeah, I thought about that too, but anyway, a lot of options I will think about.
Do you mind if I know we're 4 minutes past time right now, but I have like a bunch of thoughts in my head. Do you mind if I speak for a few minutes or a couple minutes just to get these thoughts, and you can let me know if you have any feedback, and then we can wrap it up whenever you're ready?
Just vent, and I hope I will not want to respond too much.
Okay, well, you can always respond later, or I'm happy to extend it for another 10 minutes or whatever you want as well. But yeah, I think it's just we're on kind of a roll here, and it's just good to just get these thoughts out here a little bit so we can think about it. So yeah, I think this morning actually I was listening to a podcast. There's a new Bankless podcast with a person from Paradigm who's partnered with OpenAI, and they have an EVM benchmark, new benchmark for LLMs that's verifying smart contracts. Basically, that's specifically what they're doing, and they have a agent harness that has a EVM built in, so it can actively like test out smart contract bugs and flaws and deterministically find out if there's a flaw in the smart contract. And LLMs are like 70% good at finding bugs in smart contracts now, and they increased from 20% like 6 months ago. So they're getting much better at finding bugs. And so one of the conclusions that they drew was that software is becoming more perfect, basically. And so ORDAO could potentially have this kind of hardening, and ORDAO could become pretty much 100% reliable, or like 99.999% reliable or whatever, in terms of just the smart contract working. Over time, I think that's probably true. It's kind of similar to how, they also talk about how like AI might find like this new like math that can break cryptography in general. So yeah, I can't say 100%, but one of the analogies they draw is like, for example, Bitcoin has had like $1 trillion bug bounty or something like that for like 10 years, and it hasn't been broken. So that's had a lot of natural hardening. And with AI being able to observe and look at all these different potential bugs in something like ORDAO, then it can become more hardened, more secure over time. And so I think that can provide some assurance that provides more. I think you did a great job in building ORDAO, but of course there could be bugs in there. It hasn't been tested with a lot of money, but that's something that even without a lot of money on the line or anything like that, that we could get better, agents testing this and being able to audit it for us and stuff like that. And it's going to get better and better over time at verifying that. And then one issue that I saw with using respect as the way to determine which chain is like the real chain, I guess you'd have respect in the firmament, and then you'd be using respect in the firmament to determine which chain is real. Okay, so I think that's good. But also, like, the first thing that came to mind was the respect would be on the blockchain, and I'm like, well, what happens if a blockchain goes down? If Base gets compromised, or if Ethereum gets compromised, or whatever? Like, at the end of the day, I think you want to use the blockchains as a tool but not be too dependent on them. And so by having the Eden Plus Fractal Council process or some similar subjective legislative process as the ultimate decision maker in a way, then you can be more resilient to any specific blockchain failure. And we have this metaphor of the blockchain as like a ground and the firmament's like the sky. So I thought about it kind of like how people can migrate in the land. If the land is going bad, if a blockchain is being compromised, they can migrate. They can follow the stars in the sky, which, by the way, is closely aligned with what's in the Bible in like the first paragraph with the firmament, first couple paragraphs where it says like the stars will be for signs, and people have always traditionally, like when they're crossing oceans, they follow the North Star or they follow the stars. And so my idea is like people could follow the firmament to decide what blockchain to go to determine what land they want to use instead. And potentially we can use ORDAO on 10 blockchains at once if we want to increase security and verifiability. So I think that works, and ultimately you do want to have that subjective process to determine those things probably, and just determine which ground you want to build on in a way. Just some thoughts there. I think also it's important to improve punctuality. Like sometimes we get a little bit lax about it, hey, being 3 minutes past the top of the hour, so we're going to pass a proposal, but maybe in that end state you do want to have it where there's no room for that proposal to be past 2 minutes after the top of the hour, and then derive less legitimacy from that. And I think ultimately, like, it comes down to legitimacy in a way, and like what people believe and what people keep on acting with alignment to. It's kind of like how Bitcoin, at the end of the day, there's a Bitcoin blockchain, and that's objective, but people really like Bitcoin is really a social technology in a way more than a computer technology in a way, because people determine what is the real Bitcoin. Like, it easily could have been Bitcoin Cash instead of Bitcoin, but people determined, hey, this one's more legitimate. And so the Eden Plus Fractal Council process, I think, and any kind of subjective process, I think, has more power in the way of legitimacy in a way that can react to changes in the technology. And if people view it as legitimate, then it will be legitimate. And to whatever extent that people don't view it as legitimate, then they'll view a fork as being legitimate. But the more that we hold to punctuality, and the more that we can verify with things, even if they're not 100% perfect, but if there's better code for ORDAO and on more chains and so forth, then that provides more verification to follow the legislative process. So yeah, those are just some thoughts. I'm curious whenever you have thoughts on that. And then one other thing that you mentioned like an hour ago that I just want to bring back up, which is kind of related to this, is you mentioned why you started the Synchronous Respect Tree game, and you just proposed it as a game without making it like a proposal for the official process, and it was just kind of like a game that could provide whatever information is useful. And I agree. I think that like there can be kind of a progression of like things being just like an informal game or signal or just something that somebody writes, and then eventually if it works out well, then you can specify it and create specifications for it, and then eventually if that keeps working out well, then you can build software around it, and then eventually if that works out well enough and people keep on doing this, then it can be written into an intent document, and that can be like kind of different layers of how of whether it's in the firmament and how strongly it's in the firmament in a way. And it can kind of like ossify over time from just this vague idea into, if it becomes more and more useful, then it becomes more ossified and specified in our intents. And when we do those intents, we can say words like optional and stuff, like for Synchronous Respect Trees to say, hey, it's optional or whatever. And we can also make educational documents that are outside of intent documents that can also be hosted in Firmament too. But maybe that kind of goes along with this too. It's also just a note that I had that I wanted to just also come back to. But yeah, those are my thoughts basically. And I don't see an issue with that. I think that'd work out well. Maybe I don't fully understand the issues that you saw with that. But I don't think we need to solve everything now, obviously. We just need a good enough design to go forward to and go forward with that can help us explore the design space, and then ultimately have flexibility to determine what is the best specific design as we learn more. But to me, it seems like we have a pretty clear path there. And I can see that working very well in the long term with the foundations we've built so far.
Mm-hmm. Clear path, you say. Just create a spec for Eden Plus Fractal ruled chain.
Yeah, I mean that's the spec for the Firmament implementation of Eden Fractal with Eden Plus Fractal as the ruler, right? I mean, we're planning on doing our intent documents at some point, and I feel like that's like these things are going to come together. I think with the Firmament and the Eden Plus Fractal, and I think we should also start using the Eden Fractal GitHub when we start using Firmament. And there's a clear path where we can just start doing that whenever we're ready. We can we'll start small. We'll just be like, hey, here's the official Eden Plus Fractal process that we've been doing. And we just want to just make it clear in these sentences, or this is the official respect game rules that we've been doing. We'll approve a proposal with the Eden Plus Fractal Council. We'll put it up on the Eden Fractal GitHub, and then it'll be there, and we'll add the Firmament gradually there. And then if we want to update it, we'll update it, and we'll add more over time there, I think.
I will come back to GitHub, something to discuss later time. But then in your model, the ultimate judge for which chain is Eden Fractal chain would be basically the world, in the sense that it basically comes down to a question: which chain is the most legitimate chain?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's not the most respected chain. Well, in a sense, those legitimacy and respect are connected, but it's not. And probably we cannot even formalize that. What is the most legitimate chain? And it's up to basically. So then, when it comes to if I have this chain and want to verify it, basically I have to make a subjective decision if this is the legitimate chain out of all the chains. I think most of the time it will be pretty easy decision, because there will be no competing chains most of the time, I think, because some people from the council should create forks for, and or should someone somehow fake votes from a council or an Eden Fractal events to create forks, but yeah, that's. Do you understand what I'm saying? That this validation of the chain would come down to subjective judgment of legitimacy on behalf of a validator, which could be an agent or a person which validates the chain.
Yeah, well, I think so. I mean, to me, it's not just the validator. It's up to everybody who, I guess you can call everybody a validator in a way, but people who join Eden Fractal meetings, people who watch Eden Fractal videos, people who just learn about Eden Fractal, or people who are producing specific blocks for Eden Fractal, like all of them are, subjectively, whether they realize it or not, making that decision. I think it is possible there could be a lot of forks, like have a lot of forks of Bitcoin or Ethereum, if Eden Fractal can get to that stage where it has a lot more popularity and visibility and so forth. Then there could be many different forks of Eden Fractal, but like when people go to use Ethereum or Bitcoin now, they don't have to think too much about which was the real Bitcoin? Is it Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash? Like people are just like, oh, it's Bitcoin. That kind of just won in the minds and in the hearts and the minds of people, basically. And people don't have to make that decision, basically. They're just like, that's Bitcoin, so I want Bitcoin. I don't want BTCH or whatever.
No, but in Bitcoin, this problem, Bitcoin has forks all the time. Within Bitcoin, until it gets sometimes it happens that two blocks are produced around roughly the same time, and there might be miners which compete on that block. Then with 3 and 4 confirmations, it's basically one of the forks dies out. So that's more of a kind of analogy that I would take, but yeah, even those kinds of fork, I see them as less likely for Eden Fractal.
Yeah, and I suppose the analogy there would be like maybe if there's some big, I don't know exactly how that happens. I've heard of that, but I'm not too familiar with how there's these different micro forks in Bitcoin. But you could think of it maybe example if there is some conflict, and then there's two different parts, half of the Eden Fractal community, or 1/3 of the Eden Fractal community thinks that you were a counselor, and then, or this proposal got passed, but it didn't. It was like 2 minutes late or something, or I should probably just step back and just explain this clearer. Say 1/3 of the Eden Fractal community believes like there's a proposal to make you counselor, and it happened 2 minutes after the end of the hour that was supposed to happen, and 1/3 of the community felt like that wasn't right because you should have been elected 2 minutes beforehand, and because you weren't, that means that you should not be a counselor, and they believe that this block where you're not a counselor is the correct one. But 2/3 of the community is like, the intent was that Tadas would be a counselor. Maybe he just had an internet issue, and that's why he wasn't elected a counselor at that point. So we believe that this is legitimate. And then maybe that 1/3 of the community is so like that they care so much about this and they really believe it's important that they're like, you know what, we're going to host our own Eden Fractal meeting at the same time next week and come to this meeting instead. And because this is the real Eden Fractal, and maybe 1/3 of the community members do that, and then 2/3 of the community members still go to the original Eden Fractal meeting where you're the counselor, and then maybe it's a big enough issue that there's a permanent fork, and this becomes Eden Fractal Classic, and this one becomes Eden Fractal Regular, or maybe it dies out. Maybe it's like, those 1/3 people who join that other event, they're like, this isn't really that big of a deal. I'm just going to join the main event where there's 66% of the people because this is better, and then it automatically gets resolved then, and people start joining there, and then it's kind of just naturally assumed that the one that kind of won out, the fork with 66% becomes 80% and 90%, and then it's just like the one that's like known as the legitimate one that is basically objectively Eden Fractal for most purposes by like the market or the world in a way.
Yeah, but the problem I see is for people who get the chain and want to verify, and if I say in the future you don't know how many agents will interpret that fork, how will we interpret it? Maybe we will interpret that that this 1/3 chain is the legitimate one.
Well, I think they can, but also because agents are generally, at least now, they're run by people. They're following instructions from people, and so maybe if I'm in that 1/3 and I don't believe that you legitimately should have been counselor, then I have my own agent and it's producing blocks for my chain that doesn't have Tadas as a counselor. But then you and Zal are in the chain where 66% of people believe that you are the counselor, and you have your agents producing blocks that say that you are the counselor. So the agents can be pointed to do, like they can know, like follow the intent of this group or community. And then ultimately it comes down to the same thing: which people and their agents do you trust more, and do you view more to be more legitimate? And both of those can exist potentially. Maybe if I have a good point, then people view mine as Eden Fractal Classic and yours as Eden Fractal, and then to whatever extent that the market views that or the world views that, then they both have legitimacy. Or they just realize I'm wrong or you're wrong or whatever, and they just converge over that one set of blocks.
Yeah, but I see use cases where for external world which do not participate in Eden Fractal, like we are using Eden Fractal, say, for determining which I don't know, smart contract or which app is a proper app for some name. Could be Eden Fractal could host a whole domain system, for example, and then this user would be like it would require him a lot of work to make a judgment himself. But there would be no way to ensure that that the agent does the correct judgment. So,
well, one thing that they could do is just point the agent and saying, like, we're going to trust whatever the Eden Fractal community said, and we're going to wait 2 blocks until it's finalized. And so they won't take the opinions of Eden Fractal. What?
There is no finalization, and people who ratify blocks, they are elected by the previous blocks. So if there is a question for this block where the fork happened, it means that if this block where the fork happened is questionable, and it is questionable if the other fork has at least a little bit of legitimacy, then that's it. That puts the question on all the subsequent blocks in that chains.
I think this can be resolved fairly easily with the right programming or intent. So the person can view Eden Fractal's outputs kind of like an API in a way, and say, hey, like we want to. I don't know. Say if it's a decision to put more clarity on it. You said website, but say if it's Eden Fractal saying to direct $1,000 here or something like that, and they're determining who to send that $1,000 to. Then that organization might say, hey, I'm only going to do this when I view Eden Fractal's consensus as sufficiently finalized. And so I will wait 1 month before actually following the consensus to see if the Eden Fractal community sorts out anything or something like that. Or maybe 2 months, because there'll be a higher degree of finality at that point. So it can just choose to use an older block. And then if it doesn't want to wait, then that's similar, by the way, to how Bitcoin, like when people are doing transactions for Bitcoin, if it's something that's valuable, then they won't settle the deal before 6 blocks. So they'll just wait because they've realized that it has this finality. And, like not everybody needs to know that so much, but there's like this general wisdom, hey, wait for 6 blocks before doing a big transaction. People who are doing millions of dollars are aware of that, generally speaking. But most people don't need to, because it doesn't really happen. Practically speaking, if somebody's going to send $5, they can just say, okay, I'm just going to send $5, and almost 100% of the time that they're totally fine. They don't have to ever think about it. So I think that's true for most cases. But if it is like maybe more than $1,000, but they're transferring $1 million at the recommendations of Eden Fractal, then maybe they do want to wait a month or something like that to just make sure that it's more finalized and it's been ratified several times by the Eden Fractal Council. And I guess ratification would also include, a ratification of the prior blocks too. They're saying that I agree with this new block and the prior blocks as well. So ratifying is also specifically providing additional finality for the prior blocks. But then, and one last thought here too is that another thing that could happen too is that you could program intent into the agent too, and so you could say, hey, I value I don't want to wait for a month and get greater finality. I want to just do what Eden Fractal says right now, but I want the agent to just look out for different blocks of Eden Fractal or different forks and see if there's any fork that is competing. And if there's a fork that's competing that has 20% of, respect voting for it, or on this blockchain it doesn't agree or whatever, then don't make this transaction. Or maybe split 80% to this fork and 20% to that fork, whatever. So like people can programmatically direct their agent with English to just direct it to view those any uncertainty about legitimacy or which fork is better, for the agent to just either pause there or direct the funds according to whichever forks are respected in proportion to how much they're respected.
Yeah, what I was saying before, waiting for more blocks as if they would improve legitimacy, that doesn't work here, like in Bitcoin. In Bitcoin, the computing power is physical resource connected to the real world, and that's what this idea is based on. Here, each block elects new councils, and so all the future blocks in that chain depend on that block being legitimate, valid. So how does waiting for blocks in the chain would increase legitimacy for that chain? If that block is not legitimate, then the council that comes after is illegitimate, and what it decides is illegitimate, and his future blocks are potentially illegitimate.
Well, I think that the corollary, or like the analogy, is that whereas Bitcoin uses computing power, which is computers taking energy, Respect games and fractals use people power, which is kind of like their brain power, their brain computing power, which is people using energy. And then, whereas, I don't know, maybe Bitcoin somehow has some cryptography or hashing to determine who's the actual producers there and so forth. Like, we're also using, I suppose, ORDAO and using on different blockchains, or maybe also like the combination of ORDAO plus posting in Firmament to kind of get that approximation or something. I'm struggling with the right words, but get that, like, take that person energy, that people energy, and have them express their legitimacy, have them express how much they think something is legitimate via whatever tools they have available, which is both the ORDAO, posting it on chain, and also posting in the Firmament. And so if the Firmament becomes corrupted, which could happen, somebody could just make their own chain and say that, hey, I'm always a delegate, and this is true. I'm always a delegate. I'm the only delegate. But that would lose legitimacy quickly because nobody else in the communities would post on any of the blockchains using ORDAO that, hey, Dan is the only delegate here. The council did not approve did not approve a proposal that Dan becomes king, so therefore we do not view that as legitimate, and we can verify that by looking on chain, and we see that there is 0 or only 1 respect holder across all these different blockchains that voted Dan as the king in this one, and so that way we can rule that out as an illegitimate fork. And to determine how legitimate something is, I suppose we could just use how many blockchains is it voted as legitimate on with respect tokens, and how many respect tokens are voting on it. And then maybe there can even be some algorithm of like how much do we weight the different value of the different blockchains, the Ethereum blockchain compared to Base and compared to whatever other blockchains we're on, and then how much respect tokens are voted on it to determine what is the true legitimate chain.
Yeah, and that's exactly the thought process that led me to focusing on respect-based consensus process. You just described that the true consensus process of this chain would be respect-based, respect vote-based. That it's basically how many people are participating, and not just how many people, because, well, it's harder to verify. Well, we could try to go in that way, but a more simple way, it seems to be how much respect does participate on this chain, right? That's something along the lines of what you were describing, and that's something that I was thinking as well before Eden Plus Fractal thing we discussed here. That ultimately it's the respect holder, or which chain it has more users, more people, more legitimate participation.
Yes, I think so. But I don't know if I'd say the true, because I still might say that the true consensus process, I think I still would say that the true consensus process is the legislative process, and it uses the votes on chain as, like, from Eden Fractal's perspective, I think it's still the Eden Plus Fractal process, or whatever comes out of that, is the thing that the community uses to express what it wants to do. And that has the benefit of being able to switch blockchains, or say if we don't want to use this blockchain, or change the algorithm for how much we want to view how much different blockchains matter, how much respect tokens matter, or change our intents and stuff. That's still the process. And then it uses the respect votes as on different blockchains as an input to make that decision. And it's also up to the wider world to determine if they want to respect just that input instead of the Eden Plus Fractal consensus process, or alongside it to some greater or lower degree. Like, if it wants to just determine, hey, maybe it's up to them to say, hey, it's up to the world to say, hey, we think that the most legitimate thing is just using Eden Fractal's respect distribution, how many users they have on Ethereum, or Ethereum and Base combined. And maybe the Eden Plus Fractal consensus process determines they want to use 10 blockchains or whatever, but we don't care about that. So we're just gonna set up like our API in a way where our agent distributes funding or does whatever it does based on the respect of Eden Fractal's existence on Base and Ethereum only. And I think that's fine. Like, Eden Fractal can produce a lot of outputs that people can input however they want. But the official Eden Fractal process will be the Eden Plus Fractal consensus process creates its Firmament blocks, and then they'll use the respect tokens voted on chain to determine the legitimacy, to help them as a tool, to help them determine the legitimacy and verify it, to determine which Firmament block is ultimately correct and which council is ultimately correct. Do you see this? Does that make sense? And do you see the distinction I was trying to make there? I was trying to say like the ultimate power is still with the council, but it's really up to it's up to whatever people view as most legitimate. I guess I don't know. Maybe my point is a bit diluted, but yeah.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I see what you're trying to say initially, but it's actually not one consensus process. So where is in Eden Plus Fractal consensus process, where it's also ORDAO, OREC is also consensus process. So whereas I would say Eden Plus Fractal is a legislative process, and it is a consensus process as well. So legislative branch has a consensus process, which is Eden Plus Fractal consensus process. Executive branch, and there could be maybe many executive branches, but maybe the main one is ORDAO, and it has its own consensus process, OREC. And I think we are approaching here a new way to evaluate basically legitimacy, which would take into account both Eden Plus Fractal process and how many respect holders are participating. And you see, in a sense, ORDAO achieves that criteria of which chain has more respect holders participating, although it's old respect, but still. And you can still, from ORDAO, you can see how much new respect is participating as well. So, anyway, I'm kind of leaning towards specifying this new process, new mechanism to determine validity a judicial branch. But I don't know if we want to go there now.
Okay, well,
because in a sense it would be judging legitimacy of legislative process, and also of it would also have to judge which implementation implements which executive branch is the legitimate one.
Well, I think that in a way, the legislative is also judging the executive branch.
Yes.
And you could say the executive branch is judging the legislative branch too, in a way, because if it doesn't agree with what the legislative branch does, it could just do something different. And we've previously called the respect game as the judicial branch, but that's kind of awkwardly phrased, I'm thinking about it for the first time, because a game can't be a branch. The game is the way that the branch participates in a way. But also, as we're discussing this, it's also making me realize that, there's different stakeholders in a way who are also in a way interacting with Eden Fractal, and not all of them are playing respect games. Like, for example, if there's an organization that's making decisions based on what Eden Fractal does, then they're also judging what Eden Fractal does, and they're judging the legislative branch, the executive branch, and so forth. So maybe it does make sense to more broadly define the judicial branch as something not just a respect game, but like the populace or something like that. I don't know, I'm just talking about like one word that I don't know if it makes sense or not, but like the populace interacts with the Eden Fractal consensus process through the respect game, where it determines how much respect to give and judges people's contributions, and also judges people's participation and the output of the legislative and executive branch, and it can also, like, in some cases, an organization that might be directing millions of dollars based on what Eden Fractal does is also kind of participating in that judicial branch in a way, in their own way, because they're just judging which branch which ORDAO or which Eden Plus Fractal consensus process or whatever they see as legitimate. I don't know if that should be part of the tripartite governance model, because that's kind of outside of the tripartite governance in a way. That's kind of like how the market, it's kind of like United States government, for example, has 3 formal governance branches. It has a legislative, which council, it has the president and all those agencies, and it has a Supreme Court and stuff. And then there's other stuff like the market, the news. Before they had just talked about the fourth estate, which is like the media. People also talk about different like the economy is also like another kind of like judge. So I don't know if we want to talk about all those different judges as part of the tripartite governance structure, or if we want to change that. I'm just kind of throwing out some ideas and exploring these, but what we might want to, and it doesn't really make sense to call the respect game specifically the only like judicial branch in a way. I feel like, I mean, it kind of does, but I think it could probably be improved. But it does. I think one of the points you made in the University of Tripartite Governance Structure is they all kind of overlap to some extent, and people can play their role in different branches of the tripartite governance structure. But it's even like, to some extent, the ORDAO legislates. It's just not as good as legislating as the legislative branch, because it doesn't have the meeting and everything like that. And to some extent, the legislative branch evaluates, and the legislative is just really super smart, basically, so it can evaluate very well. But it still can't evaluate as well as, say, the judicial branch to be a respect game, because it's limited to 1 hour and people only have so much speaking time. Whereas the respect game can allow people to go in 100 different breakout groups and get all this kind of different kind of intelligence, where you have this like wisdom of the crowds. So in some ways, the respect game is much more equipped for judging than the legislative branch is. So that makes sense. And then there's kind of the market, which judges too. So I don't know how the best way to define this is, but I think it's worthy of exploration. And kind of forgot what you said, because we've been talking for a while. Was there anything else you said that I should respond to, or anything else you want to add?
No, I mean, you were kind of responding on topic, if that's what you're asking. But my universality of tripartite governance pattern. Yeah, you first of all, you're right. All of these branches, they perform judging functions. Because it's just like part of any thought process is judging, evaluating stuff. You cannot decouple from that. But when it comes to whole organization, so the legislative branch decides what to do, executive branch executes that what. So legislative branch sets intent.
Mm-hmm.
Executive branch executes intent. And the way I define judicial branch in that article, judicial branch judges or verifies whether execution matches intent, whether execution was done correctly. That's how I defined it in that article, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, this has been on my mind for some time now. Maybe I didn't share it, but I think for me right now, respect game fits more into legislative branch. And actually, I would say Eden Plus Fractal and respect game are two different legislative branches. Because if you look at the relationship between ORDAO, which is executive branch, and respect game decides the respect distribution, ORDAO just execute. It makes a distribution, and it's not like respect is only part of respect game as judicial process. It's also ORDAO participates in creation of that distribution. And also respect game does not have this ability to judge this whole interaction between legislative process and executive process. And what I'm what I was suggesting is that what you are approaching here when you suggest taking into account both the legitimacy of the Eden Plus Fractal process as well as how much respect is participating. For me, it seems that you're leading towards that perspective, which would take into account both legislative branch and executive branches, and how and whether they match and interact, and whether specifically which executive implementation implements the intent correctly. And for me, that approaches that definition, or the original definition of judicial branch. And I'm not sure if this could be specified. Maybe this judicial branch, it's not really a branch, it's a judicial process. It's just individual people making judgments, subjective judgments about which legislative and executive branches are legitimate. So I don't know how to formalize, and if we need to formalize judicial branch, but yeah, it's something like that. But because in general, there is a general problem in life that an entity cannot really judge itself. I think you need an external process to judge properly, because you cannot look objectively at yourself, or you're very limited in your ability to look objectively at yourself. Anyway, just some thoughts about. I don't know. Do you want to continue?
I do have thoughts now to respond with, so if you want to hear, I'm up to continue, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. I could also follow up with my thoughts in the audio message and like that, but if you're up for it, I can respond now, and then we can either stop after I go, or we can continue. We could also say we won't go longer than, say, 10 or 15 minutes, too, if we want to just put a stop on it, but still allow us to talk a bit more.
Try to respond, and I will try to.
Okay, sounds good. So this is a very interesting discussion. So very intellectually stimulating. I think that you're right that it's difficult for somebody to judge themselves, but also in some ways it's difficult for somebody to objectively judge themselves, and that's also true for organizations. But in some way, the person or organization or community is more well equipped to judge itself than anybody else in a way, because they know themselves better than anybody else. And even though they can't be 100% objective, like it's tough to be really objective about anything in the world, like, because everything's a little bit subjective, at least. Like, what is blue? Like, there's all these different shades of blue, and something that's slightly blue, something that's slightly green might look like slightly blue to people. And even at like atom and in quantum physics, a wave can be a particle or a wave depending on subjectivity. So I don't know, maybe I'm going too deep with here, but I think there is like some level of like there's a lot of subjectivity inherent in the world, and when we have like, just because it's difficult to know ourselves or our organizations objectively, it's also difficult for outside parties to know it objectively, and we can still do a lot by using our own brains to objectively measure ourselves, or an organization can use its own processes and people to objectively measure itself, and a lot of organizations do that with like KPIs and stuff like that. So it is possible, and I think it's worthy to measure yourself or measure an organization and try to do it objectively, but also have some just knowledge that it will be subjective to some extent. And then your point about respect game being kind of a legislative process is interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought of it before, but all of these processes are at the same time judicial, legislative, and executive in a way, and they're just specialized. it's kind of like the brain in a way. I guess all parts of the brain probably play a role in that stuff. Like there's not one part of the brain that's legislative and one part of the brain as executive. Like you could say that the neocortex is the most legislative aspect because it has the most like kind of power to do deep thinking, but it also does some execution as well. Like it executes some decision and it sends it to other parts of the brain, and it also does judicial. It also like it's very good at reviewing things probably, but other parts of the brain are better at executing things, and other parts of the brain and body are better at and the executive branch also like it executes the hands and the feet and stuff like that and the eyes. So that's another thing too, because there can be like different things that happen, like both the results of what people do in the world, like you are an executor in a way, building ORDAO and building different things. I'm an executor when I'm responding to people or writing articles or whatever. And also we're talking about, like a business can be an executor or a nonprofit organization can also be an executor. So these are kind of like both different entities and have their own functions, as well as they can serve as kind of like extensions that can execute actions and kind of be like a body that acts on behalf of the community. So that's just helpful maybe to think about the whole anatomy of it in a way. And then to your point about the respect game being like a legislative process, as you were saying that, it was occurring to me, which is kind of different what you said, but it was occurring to me that the respect game you were saying that you didn't see the respect game as much as a judicial process as a legislative process, but right before you said that, I was seeing respect game more as a judicial process than before in a way, because I was thinking like one of the ways that the world can view the legitimacy of either the legislative process or the executive process is by how many people are participating in the respect game, and how many people are posting like their respect game results, and also electing a delegate right after the respect game and stuff like that. Like, so in a way, the respect game is very good at judging the legislative process and the executive process, because if they don't believe, like, one, they can both judge, hey, if I was a bad counselor, they can give me less respect. Or if I made a bad decisions as an ORDAO, then they can give me less respect. But then on a second hand, they determine, the people who participate in respect games, which fork is right. Like if there's two different forks of Eden Fractal, people have to choose to go, and they're both at the same time, people have to choose to go to one game or the other. And I guess people, would probably choose between posting consensus on one ORDAO or the other. And so in a way, that's kind of like almost like maybe an ultimate judge, or more towards an ultimate judge, because they're kind of voting with their feet in a way. They're deciding which respect games to play. So that made me think, the respect game really is a way for people to judge what legislative and ORDAO processes are right, or what fork is right. Like, what is the real Eden Fractal? What is the right fractal community to participate in? It's the one that they participate in via the respect game. So I see your point too, and I think it would be confusing if we I think it probably makes sense. I think you're kind of leaning towards having the respect game redefined as a legislative process, and then call like the market or like the wider world as the executive process, as the judicial process, because you were saying how it's tough to know yourself, and you kind of just have to allow the world to know you. But I think that's kind of like how like the United States government has a specifically defined legislative process. And that's the Supreme Court and all the courts. But then the world is also judging United States governance as a whole. And those are two different things. That's one, it's an internal judicial process, and it's an external judicial process. And that external judicial process is going to happen either way. And if you're not successful, then nobody's going to care to judge. But if you're successful, then people are going to care to judge, and people are going to make their judgments. And I don't think that obviates the need or reduces the need for having a good internal judicial process. I think you still need that capability to judge yourself as well. And I think that the legislative process and executive process can both judge, but they're not as good at it as the respect game is in a way, because the legislative process only has an hour every 2 weeks to judge, and it can only make so many judgments. And the executive process, the ORDAO, doesn't have that same way of coordinating, like, because it just happened on chain, people aren't talking and stuff like that. So they're limited in their judgment capacity, and they can make judgments, but the respect game, or at least the participants who participate through the respect game, have the greatest capacity for self-judgment of the community, or community judgment, in terms of the internal community judgment ability, because they can choose both how to rank contributions toward the consensus processes, if people are good delegates or good respect holders in ORDAO, and they can also just choose where to show up and what games to play. And then the games that are played more will help provide more legitimacy for those legislative processes and ORDAO processes that the community is playing the games with, basically. And so that's an argument why it's important to have an internal judicial process, and why the respect game helps facilitate that better than the legislative process or the executive process. And of course, it's an addition to the external judicial process, but you don't really have control over that to some extent. You have a lesser degree of that. You can't design how people will judge your community, but you can design how people can express their intent and act with more agency to determine what respect games to play, and then how to rank people's contributions in that respect game, which therefore provides a more objective judgment function and judicial function for the community on an internal level. And it can do so because it has the ability to branch out into the fractals with 100 different fractal groups, where everybody's determining what groups to show up in, and they're all expressing their preference on what the judgment should be.
Yeah, when talking about this new kind of judicial process, I just threw out one idea about how to interpret that, but it's external world. But I also see potential for specifying judicial process. For example, what I refer to as most respected chain. Or some kind of meta process that would define proper interaction between legislative process and executive process. And that specification for the judicial process could act as basis for verifying a chain. So yeah, but maybe let's stop here. Just one other question. You said some part of my message in topic proposal was exciting to you?
Mm-hmm.
Which part?
Oh, the whole thing. I thought it was like kind of a badass post. It was like, I mean that in a good way. I mean, that sounded like a very, as I say it, like just the words aren't very good. But it's just like, it sounded pretty awesome. You just mentioned how it's much more simpler and easier to deliver and can give the benefits. And then you say, systematic way to integrate many consensus building tools and select them. That's good, but that's not like any like thing like that's like drop the mic kind of good. Create a space for Fractal developers, great. Allow different invitations to Fractalgram, sounds good, all good. System track and version governance documents effectively, sounds good. Unite what we're effectively calling the legislative and executive branches into a single chain, human speed chain, one period, 1 to 2 blocks, secured by old Eden Fractal and new Eden Fractal Respect. This is getting more interesting now. And a new way to market in a way that might be attractive to crypto people, concept of mining from your laptop, viable again, that's nice. And then a systematic way to integrate AI agents into a process without losing control, very good. I don't think that's all. In general, I think it could start the next generation of DAOs which natively work at the extraction fully understandable to all, not just smart contract developers. And that would be very aligned with where the whole tech world is going thanks to LLMs. I just read it all, and so you can kind of hear what I was most excited about. Like, I think it's all exciting, but it kind of just builds up, and you make a lot of good points about why it'd be useful, and then like saying, it's a new way to market it, and it's the next generation of DAOs, and that's not all. Like, I think that's some really good, explanation that made me, think about it in a different way. So.
Yeah, I'm asking because one of the reasons this idea is overwhelming is because I'm not sure how to present it because there are many features, many use cases.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to focus on when presenting to people because it's a lot of work to write everything up, especially when you don't have a prototype yet. Anyway.
Mm-hmm. Well, it'll come. Like I said, I think we could start just using what we have That's what we always do. We'll use the tools that we have, post proposals, maybe we'll post on GitHub or something different, and then we'll have a little prototype in 6 months or something like that, 3 months maybe, and then we'll get better and better, and we'll get better at explaining it. Last thought that I had, I agree we can wrap it up now, but you made some good points there, so I appreciate that. I appreciate the discussion very much, and I think at some point it'd be good to also formalize the roles, like, of who participates in these different processes. Like, I thought, council has delegates, and also voters who vote the delegates. ORDAO has respect holders. And then the third one is maybe like players or voters or participants or something like that. I don't know. Something that might also help to make it more practical and down to earth to kind of explain who is the parties in each one. But that's also up to debate if we'll do something totally different or something. So I think this has been a very productive discussion. So thanks to us. This is fascinating. And look forward to next steps and exploring what Firmament can be and exploring how Eden Fractal can grow. You have any other final thoughts, or should we wrap up?
Yeah, thanks for the discussion. I think it's been helpful, and I hope we continue that. There is a lot of room to continue. And I would like to have this recording. I don't know. Could you? I think I have access to some Google Drive where you upload it first.
Yeah, I think you do. I'll check to see if you do or don't, and then I'll give you it if you don't, and then I'll also send you this in Telegram as well. And I'll send it later today so you have it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Das. And yeah, shall we wrap it up now?
Yep, you can.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, it's been a 3-hour one. What?
Back to 3 hour.
Back to exactly.
1 minute. Let's wait until 3 hours.
Let's just jump right back into the Firmament discussion. We'll be back and we'll be at 4 hours in no time. Well, anyway, maybe within 1 minute, I'll just thank everybody for watching, as well as thank everybody for participating in Eden Fractal. Big shout out to Zal and Rosmari who joined us today, and I look forward to seeing you, Das, as well as everyone else at Eden Fractal, Eden Town Hall, next Thursday, March 12th at 16 UTC, and then for the Respect game, Eden Fractal Respect game at 17 UTC on Thursday. And also, I'll probably, I think we're just making proposals in Telegram as opposed to Snapshot. So I'll just put that proposal up in Telegram, I guess, or I can put it up in Snapshot if it seems like a better idea. So we'll aim to approve that proposal for the Eden Fractal break starting on March 26th next week. And then we'll enjoy our spring break, but we'll have a few events before then.
Yeah, we probably want to put it up as a topic proposal or to have it in the agenda list.
Yep, good point. All right, I assume that you're going to facilitate the Synchronous Respect Trees game for starting tomorrow, and then also anybody can make their contribution requests there, which will be more tightly scoped to contribution requests now.
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. I think we got through everything we needed to go, and we're pretty much at the top of the hour. I don't think we need to waste another 30 seconds waiting. So maybe we'll say 3, 2, 1, go Eden Fractal, and then we'll call it a night.
Okay.
All right. 3 up, and there we go. 3 hour mark. 3, 2, 1, go Eden Fractal. All right. Thanks so much, and see you next time.
See you.